poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson.
Yo, welcome back to Chasing Poker Greatness. I'm your host, founder of EnhanceYourEdge.com, Brad Wilson, and today I have a very special episode in store for you. My guest is indisputably one of the greatest players to ever sit down at a poker table. He came onto the poker scene like a hurricane and swept away anyone and everyone in his path to being the number one ranked poker player in the world. And then, equally as abrupt, he decided to call it a day and retire, all before the age of 26. Today, I'm joined by Fedor Holz. Fedor has absolutely dominated both live and online poker tournaments during his career. He's earned more than $40 million, taking down several multi-million dollar cashes along the way. He has a WSOP bracelet, and his results on WSOP.com show him with 12 cashes, averaging almost $1 million per cash. Among those are a first place in the high roller for one drop, $111,111 buy-in for $4.9 million, and a second place finish in the big one for one drop, a $1 million buy-in for $6 million. He's ranked as number one on the all-time money list for Germany and 8th in the world. He was ranked as the number one poker player in the world in 2016, as well as being ranked number one in the world for online poker in 2014 and 2015. My conversation with Fedor covers what got him into the game, his unique perspectives on poker and life, what it was like to truly achieve poker greatness and reach the top, and finally, his surprising decision to leave the game. He'll let you in on the importance of physical tells in live poker and what you should be looking for, as well as why you should stop looking for cut and dry solutions and instead strive to build your poker strategy around logic. Oh, and you'll also learn Fedor's method to super accelerate your learning and the amazing results he's achieved simply by connecting talented people to one another. By the time you finish listening to this podcast, you will undoubtedly be inspired to get to work on something you're passionate about, no matter what that might be. Thank you very much once again for listening. And now, this is Chasing Poker Greatness featuring Fedor Holz. Fedor, my man, how are we doing?
I'm doing amazing, actually. Really hyped.
Just on life, just amazing all the way around.
Actually, yeah, it's interesting where I think you can make a decision on whether something costs you energy or brings you energy, and I feel that's becoming more and more a thing that I really want to focus on, is to see everything as an opportunity, and even things that suck or that feel bad in the moment, like it's everything I think is an opportunity to grow. So that's exciting.
So how do you take a negative experience and have that negative experience give you energy?
So there's actually countless examples where, especially in direct comparison, it's so powerful, where situations, let's say, there's constant situations, right? Like if I look at my day, I could, and I write it, I have a diary with me, or I make mental notes. It's 100 times a day. It's like someone in front of me is slow. Like there's this, you're in a rush and someone is blocking you. Like there's this little moment of like, oh damn, why is this guy blocking? And to take this moment and realize like, hey, this is an opportunity for me to learn patience. And why am I so stressed by it? Why am I rushing? Like, yeah, okay, there's something I want to get to, but it's not going to go faster, right? It's not like I can. And then it's interesting because when I make it a conscious process and then I go into it and I'm like, hey, wow, actually, I'm pissed right now, but I don't need to be pissed. I can just use this moment as a practice for, patience and compassion. Is like, hey, okay, a person is handicapped and a bit slower, and it's like just the way it is right now, then suddenly like I just see how I put a smile on and take this little thing as an opportunity. And there's countless times of where you talk to someone and it triggers something, and that person you let's say I'm being judgmental, so I dismiss whatever the person is saying is like, oh, that doesn't make sense, it's not logical, it's not rational. To use that as an opportunity to say like, why do I believe that? Why am I so strong in my belief that I have a better understanding of whatever that topic is about? And why am I not practicing, like maybe even being helpful and being open, first of all, being open to a new perspective, because there's always something that I can learn from someone else thinking a different way. And on the other side, maybe even supporting the other person and sharing my own perspective, like, hey, this is how I see it. Is there something you can take from this to, like, for us to make this situation a better situation for both of us? And that's just one example.
Yeah. You mentioned the diary or a journal, taking notes. So it's like, this is an active process of like, oh, this guy's moving. Like you're driving in your car, this guy's moving very slow. You get out your journal and you're like, this pisses me off. Like, and then is there like reflection after the fact? Is that how it goes down?
I think there's countless of ways to do it. And the core of it for me is to bring awareness to the situation. So there's one thing of realize, like, I think there's multiple ways of how people describe it, but it all starts with consciousness. It's around realizing. It's like, hey, wow, I feel this in this way. And first it's only kind of internal. You're like, oh, okay, I'm pissed. It's like, okay. The step before is just like being pissed. And then I think out of this, a lot of things develop. Because I also think once you become aware of it, there's something internally, like some type of compass, something like it's your value system, like where your internal compass is telling you that there's a gap. There's a gap between your compass and what you feel, right? So you observe anger and you feel like, oh, okay, I don't really need this. Like this is not serving me. This is not useful. And once you've established that, then I think the next step for me is to go into, okay, what can I do about it? Like, how do I want it to be? Is this, if it's not serving me, like how do I want it to be? And that kind of kicks off this process of, with some things I write it down because it's deep topics. It's like something that I want to sit with, something that sometimes I write down smaller things, but like actually the most fun thing, for example, for me is to just do it on the fly. As I experience something, I reflect it right there, right now. And I'm like, and it brings a smile on my face because I'm laughing around it's kind of funny that I feel it. Then immediately after I'm like, okay, I just felt this way. Then I'm like, how do I want to feel it? And it just happens in like 5 seconds and it makes me laugh.
And I would assume that this is the culmination of a process over time, lots of practice, having this awareness. And by the way, I'm of the opinion that at the end of the day, all we are is awareness. Just as people, we are consciousness. We are awareness. That's all we are. And I'm not going to go down that path. Okay. Because like, you said like, this makes me mad, right? So like the next question for me is always like, what is me? Like, what is me? And then it just spirals from there. And like, at the end of the day, I think we are pure awareness. That's what we are. And when you accept that and learn that, oh, I'm getting angry, just having the awareness to notice the anger. And then sometimes, like, you mentioned anger doesn't have to be a negative feeling. I think anger can be a positive thing in some situations as far as like adrenaline, energy, all of these things. But anyway, okay. In your journey to be great, I know that you've talked about lacking a purpose, especially early on. And I want to focus on your why as a linear progression throughout your journey as a poker player. Like in the beginning, when you were struggling, what was your why?
I believe that it is actually very simple and extremely difficult at the same time, where we make it very difficult. Where there's something, I believe there's something inside us that constantly gives us feedback, right? And to tap into that to me is purpose. So to understand that natural gravitation really clearly is, okay, where do I feel naturally drawn to? And so then the real challenge then starts where all the distractions and the noise comes in.
What
so
are
there's
the
something
noise?
that there's basically, it's about all the experiences that you've made in the past, your current environment, with every construct that exists in your mind and around you, is basically like money, capitalism, fame, reputation, status, like everything that we've built of like, okay, this is a guideline of how things should work, but there's also something inside us that is not that. It's like somewhat different, right? Like, because we realize sometimes like, hey, I don't agree with that. Like,
give me some examples. Let's get tangible here.
Yeah, tangible is very, very easy. Is money. Let's take the example of money. Everyone deals with money, and there's a lot of things where it makes sense to quantify value, right? Like that was the path of like, okay, we have certain things. It's very abstract. It's really hard to quantify. Let's like create a system where we quantify productivity, and to then be able to trade productivity. Now the thing is, the question is, okay, how this quantification is trying to quantify something that is extremely complex and way beyond of our capacity to understand, right? Because productivity means creation, and it's to me, it's very obvious that we're not capable of perfectly quantifying whatever we create, because it also includes all consequences of what we create. So I'm not capable of describing how much worth I'm creating. Like it's just not possible.
Because we don't know everybody's story and how what we create affects them, right?
Exactly. So you create something and you can't say if it's good or bad. Like you can only guess. And this idea that we put money in not as a good guess, we put it in as the final answer. And that to me is, for example, that's one of the problems that I have with a lot of existing systems, is something inside me tells me, okay, there's certain ways where I totally understand why it's been put in place. It makes a lot of processes easier, especially in the short term, because now I can clearly, I was like, okay, there's this, we set these rules, there's this high score, like there's this currency that is like a clear, like there's markets, but they're all based on like a pretty poor quantification of whatever productivity is. And so now my thing is, let's look at how it plays out. Is like, okay, air has no or like almost no financial value. And so I'm like, okay, I see a clear issue with that, because I think air is very valuable. So now something inside me, like, and that's basically what's happening, is people are screaming worldwide because they're like, hey, we like the trees. And so that's where the clash comes in of our internal value system and the evaluation system that we've built. And the main problem that I see is the evaluation system that we've built, like money, and lots of others, they are a really good estimation of all the knowledge we had at a certain point in time. So people at that time came up with the best possible solution they could come up with, and it's very smart solution. But we get smarter and we learn more and we understand things based on experience of like where it fits, where it doesn't fit. The main problem that system doesn't have, it's not iterative enough, right? So you can't say it's like, okay, guys, we've realized this has, so like now we try to adapt, but the iterative process of the system is not as fast as our like increasing consciousness. At least that's my observation. So I'm seeing, okay, we're getting way more conscious of how things connect and consequences, and how this system plays out in the long run, and we're not able to implement these learnings into the system itself, and so the system is lacking behind. And to go back to your question, purpose to me is that exactly this internal evaluation system. Is like there's something internally that makes us gravitate towards something, and I don't think it needs to be something special. I think sometimes, or a lot of times, it's just important to listen to that and cut the noise, like to not get distracted by what money is telling you. Because what I've realized, that was exactly the clash. And I'm talking long time for this point, but I'm really passionate about it, is what I've realized is there are things where this will overlap, because there are certainly situations where I do what I love to do and I will make money with it, but it's not certain that if I focus on money, I will do what I love to do. Oftentimes, if I only focus on maximizing money, I will most likely not do what I love to do.
100%. There are so many things that this is applicable to. And for one thing, like doing good, serving other people. Doug Polk actually said this very well, that the people that do good in the poker community, they don't typically last, right? Because they don't make a ton of money. And so, like, helping homeless people, volunteering at a homeless shelter, like this has no monetary reward, right? But there's obvious value in it. So what is like a better system? Like what is and like air quality, right? Like our Earth. I mean, it's fairly obvious to me that we destroy the Earth. It doesn't matter how much money there is. Like it's valueless, right? So the obvious value is in saving and preserving the Earth. So like, what do you think is a better system?
And I think that's where the crux is. I think the expectation a lot of times is to be able, like, that we're only able to change something if we have a better solution. And that's where I'm a very strong advocate of saying it's not about having an immediately better system. Actually, in most cases, when you make drastic changes to a system short term, like you see that in almost everything, short term it's concerning. It's actually distressing.
Painful, yeah.
Like you go out of a relationship, sometimes in the short term it's very, very painful. And then later on you realize over a longer period of time that it actually might be very helpful. Like
we'll call it getting kicked out of a relationship. that's when it's painful.
Yeah, but it can go. Yeah, it can be either way. Where you're missing something, right? And hold, like, especially when my point is, when you've realized that there's potential, when you realize that there are certain areas that we clearly established that there's room, potential for growth and for improvement, it's not so much about the choice of saying, okay, we need a better system, and if we don't have a better system in place immediately, we don't change. For me, it's about saying, okay, great, we've realized that potential. Let's put in the energy to find a better system. And that is the part where there's a lot of people who are not interested in finding a better system because they believe that the system we have right now is serving them pretty well. And that to me is that to me is a very short-term perspective, but that I believe is one of the biggest things that keeps system in place.
It's sort of the like the giant innovators paradox, where the people that can change are the ones, they're being served very well by the system in place. So what's their incentive, right? It's an incentive game.
Yeah, and I think that's where consciousness comes into play, is the more you're aware of the consequences and a longer time scale, I believe the more or like also other people and like just a bigger scope, I believe the more you adapt to that. And I think that's what you kind of see is where people who've made some very intense experiences or reached a certain amount of consciousness, they start actually doing exactly that. When people talk about universal basic income or like donate 99% of their net worth after like donate a lot of their income, like I think you can see that movement happening where people start changing the system from within, using the resources to try to adapt it in a way that suits their understanding of an improved system better. And I think it's really important, like for me, it's really important to put more energy into exactly these type of processes.
Okay. So let's talk about your energy then. What is putting more energy into this? What does this look like?
So first of all, for me, it's really around just me personally. So I believe if what I've just been talking about, like what you asked around purpose, like I think everything boils down to consciousness. So what do you perceive, basically? And I think there's like I always try to go from first principles. So what are things that I believe I can establish for myself that I go from? And there's a couple of things that come to my mind where, for example, one of my first principles is like, I believe people are like, humans are good. Like, it sounds very simple, but in a lot of times that's the point where whenever I think exactly the situation we had before, if I'm angry at someone, or like I think someone wants to hurt me, or someone, like is trying to take advantage of me, I always try to go back to that principle and say like, no, I believe he's good. What are the reasons? Like, and then I try to understand what are the reasons I feel the way I feel, and what are the reasons he behaves the way he behaves, to then progress, to grow, like to understand why he behaves the way. Like, for example, I don't believe that people kill for the sake of kill. Like, I don't believe there's bad people. I just think like if I look at it and I see, my mother works in the social sector, and like I see a lot of the people, and like I've experienced a lot of it, and I know a lot from her, and it's like a lot of the people in troubled situations, they have a lifelong like they've only made experiences in that direction. Like they've been beaten, like their parents drank a lot, like it's real, like it's severe, like it's really intense, and I don't believe that if we would have been in a similar situation, that we just, because we were born the way we are, like that we would be totally different. I think you're very, very strongly influenced by your environment. And so my point is that, for example, to build these kind of first principles, to then constantly reflect upon them, to just constantly develop. And I believe that it's very helpful to have to build kind of your own inner, to build your own inner direction. Because I've realized that there were a lot of frameworks, and that's another principle, is like I believe I know nothing, kind of like, at least in that direction of I've used to be very judgmental, or I used to be way more judgmental and way more biased, because I just believe that I know things in a lot
What's
of
an
areas.
example? What's an example of you being
In
judgmental?
poker, like it's basically, I mean, of course, I'm, if I'm number one poker player, and like people come to me, or like even before, it's like someone shares his perspective, and I'm dismissing it because I believe like I understand it better, and that he doesn't get it. And there's lots of situations, like countless situations, where this I'm thinking in the direction of success, and so because I was more successful, like that kind of ranks the relevance of someone's opinion on a certain topic. And to kind of remove that of like, I'm just a blip, like a super, super small like perspective on something, and yes, potentially I have a better understanding of this really small window of the topic poker, but that's not everything in life. And like if I talk to that person, I can learn so much more on lots of different levels, but also I can learn something in poker, because just understanding how he thinks helps me being a better player. Simple as that, because I play against people like that all the time.
Exactly.
So it's, again, turning this around in a sense of everything is an opportunity to learn and to grow, which it just sped up my life by so much, because these things that I'm not looking at or not using as like, it's basically just, now life is the same, but instead of having 1 or 2 opportunities a day, now I have 100, just only because I opened to like, okay, maybe I can learn from this.
And it's also a much better way to create relationships too, when you
For sure
listen and engage with people instead of just dismissing them. So the transition, like, you were number one poker player in the world, and then you transitioned to not playing cards so much. Why did you leave the poker world?
That is really an interesting topic, which especially in the last couple of months I've thought a lot about. And it's, if I would describe my experience, it's basically, and it ties very nicely in with purpose. So I always used to love learning. If I think about moments of pure joy or fulfillment or flow, it was learning. Like I can literally like think back of right now, it was playing chess, it was playing computer games, like when we played championships, it was learning or playing poker at times, it was just learning new things or solving problems specifically. And I just love the way how it really made, or like also playing soccer was also a thing. So it was this thing of, I just felt my whole being was busy, kind of. I was really in this moment doing this one thing, and the interesting part is that in poker, I've really, really loved that part, and I always did in different occasions. But then more things came in, right? So then it clashes with a lot of different ideas and things in life that I believe are important because of what I've learned or experienced.
Like what?
And so, yeah, so basically, I'm like now making money, right? So now I have this skill and I've done the thing that I really liked, which was learning. And like, I remember in 2013 and 14, I just loved it. Like every day, I just loved getting in, like waking up. I dreamt of poker. I woke up. I started, like, I talked to, like, everyone I talked to was poker only and just hand histories. And I was online and forums and discussing, like, I was breathing poker. And it was mostly because of this learning part. I was just like, hey, I want to get better, and I could build my own framework of how to get better. And so now something comes in of, okay, I believe now that I've learned that making money is really important. And so now I have to twist it in a way to make as much money as possible. And so I did that. And then it's like, okay, now what are tools that I can use? So I learned the tools, and like I kind of see it as a game. But I realize the more I do that, the more I'm losing the part that I actually internally really, really appreciate and like. So now I'm changing this into a machine, like a process of how I can make lots of money, which then is like, okay, 2015, I'm realizing like, hey, actually I'm doing less and less of the learning part that I really like. And I'm just flying from place to place and grinding it out. And there's certain things that I really like around being in new environments. But after 5th time Macau, 10th time Vegas, like 8th time Monte Carlo, whatever, it's like, okay, actually I'm not really learning anything new. It's just grinding out my skill that I have. And that was really the part where I think emotionally, if I would have only listened to me internally, I would have probably quit poker after 3 years. Like I would have quit like right before being like really successful. And I think I would have been internally quite happy with it. But there was some like the external, like the value system I grew up in and that I've experienced around me really drove me to go like way further. And it's this internal thing of I wanted to prove someone and get appreciation that maybe I didn't get as a child as much as I wanted to. And it was just like, okay, I like this goal, 1 million, then 2, then like 3, then 5, then like it was just literally, okay, like just, always higher. And then I've realized at a certain point after I just couldn't set a goal anymore, I'm like, what's left? And then I sat down and I remember this moment, like I will never forget. Everything was dark, lights were out, and I went home and I just crashed. What am I doing? I'm investing so much energy into something that will never lead to the outcome that I'm internally looking for. Like trying to please my environment will never lead to me being happy with myself. And that realization kicked in. And after that, I was like, just kind of taking balance of looking at my life and looking at all the different parts and looking at, okay, what of this really gets me closer to that? And then 10% were left and the rest was free time, because poker in that way won't lead there. It was amazing. It was a great learning experience. I took a lot of things out of it. But the process that I've reached at that point wasn't really making me happy anymore. And so I moved on.
And what else is there besides our own happiness in our pursuits? I mean, like it's something that sounds so simple, but like from a pressure standpoint, I could imagine that you had probably more pressure than anybody to continue playing just because of the financial incentive, right? Yeah. So closing up shop was, a monumental, big decision. Were you scared? Yeah. Were you scared taking the next step? What did that look like?
I think the thing that internally really helps me is I think I feel more pain than others, in terms of it pains me more to continue doing a thing that I've realized I don't want to do. I see that, and that's not. I don't mean that in a always positive thing. It is like it's just when I.
What does it feel
that,
like? What is the internal struggle, that dialogue? Like what does it look like?
It's literally like, I mean, I remember that so like countless times in my life, where I've established that. Where, for example, I start playing the piano, or like I start a project, I start learning something, I start enrolling in university, I start like there's like countless times, like literally like so many times, and I come in with the mindset. I remember that every single time, the mindset around me was to finish things. It was, you're only good at something if you've if you set a certain direction or goal or whatever and you finish it. That's the only, like, finished is success, not finished is not success. And that was so against my internal feeling, where for me it was like, hey, I try something out, and if I like it I continue, and if I don't like it I don't. And then it's clashing, right? Like then I go,
then you feel like a failure
all the time. It was a constant thing of, I'm failing again. I try something again and I'm not good in, and that's now where the difference comes in. With a lot of people around me, I feel like they had less pain just doing it. It's, you realize it's not really what you want to do, but you just do it anyway. They just, they don't like whatever taking piano lessons, but they take like 40 lessons anyway, and they just do it so their parents shut up. For me, it was, I was in a barricades. I was not doing it. You could not get me to do
it. Just locked down.
So, I mean, there's examples where I was really good in chess. Like I started playing chess, and then I went on playing German championships, and I got really good. And like I was 9 or around 9 and 10, and then basically the expectation was like, okay, now just grind it, like get there and there and there. And after 1.5 years, I realized like, hey, I don't really want to do it this way. Like I just love playing it. I loved playing with people, and apparently I was good. But the moment I was good, it started getting this this huge expectation around, okay, now you have to make something out of this talent, kind of. And I just wanted to play. And I think that's also a similar process that happened in poker, or in almost any other process that I've experienced.
And you feel it as poker players. Like I've been playing cards as a professional for 15 years, and you do the pain is tangible at a certain point, to where you have this existential thoughts of, why am I doing this? Like I don't enjoy doing this. Money becomes the motivator. And for a very long time, because of the solitary nature of my specific journey, I thought I was alone. I thought I'm weak. I'm weak for feeling this way, because none of my other friends feel this way. Nobody else feels this way. Nobody talks about it, right? And then in doing this show, actually, over the last few months, just talking to other players, every fucking one of them goes through this existential crisis as a poker player. And I just want to point out how important this is for the audience to know, like, you have your goal, right? You're chasing poker greatness. You're trying to be the best that you can. But these feelings are going to arise, and they don't make you lesser. They make you human. It's part of the process. And so one thing I would like to ask you about is, in this process of knowing, like, one day this may cause me pain, the purpose behind the game has maybe gone away to where I don't love it. I'm not in love with it like I used to be. What can you do in the meantime to protect yourself in this transition, right? Because I would say you financially did very well. That it puts you in a position, sets you up to, you can fucking start 1,000 things the rest of your life and never finish them and be super happy, right? Some people out there, they have people that depend on them. Poker is, like a sole source of income. What can they do to insulate themselves against this feeling that they must continue on?
I mean, that's the biggest conversation, right? Like, I'm saying this, and then the first internal question comes up, or statement is, yeah, he can say that because now he's in the situation that he has a lot of money, a lot of freedom, a lot of opportunities. There's no one depending on him. I think that it's a very valid internal dialogue that mostly comes out of the fear of insecurity. And I'm not saying that in a dismissing way. I'm saying that in a way of I felt it too countless of times, where at least for me, it was this feeling of if I go down this path, it means a lot of uncertainty. It means like I don't like if I now follow what I feel like I wanted to do, how do I do things? If you feel like there's nothing that that was basically how I started with poker. I just felt like I want to do it.
Right. Which is how a lot of people start their journey. And I'm not, I'm not minimizing like the pain of quitting poker for you. Yeah. I'm mostly, there are people that are in the middle of their journey, that are in the honeymoon phase, right? Where they are obsessed. They talk about, I'm going to play poker for 50 years straight. I'm never going to get bored of it. But the reality is that this is most likely not going to be the case. And most people don't have the foresight to plan for this eventuality. It just happens. And then they realize, oh my God, I don't love doing this. And it's what I'm most qualified to do in the world.
But I think that statement is the thing to tackle.
Okay.
So that's what I meant. Where I was trying to get at is if you're constantly asking yourself that internal question of, hey, what do I really love doing? What are the things I really enjoy? I really believe that if you focus on these things and if you really dismiss all the noise and all the things around and go in that uncertainty and also the struggle, then I believe that you build something that is really long-term sustainable and also long-term is going to make you happy. And that's what I really believe. Also, what I see with people is it doesn't have to be something that wins in all the systems that we have. It's just something that has to be relevant to you. So, and that's really it's so simple things sometimes. It's around, I love playing soccer. It's the thing, or football. It's the thing that I've always loved since I was small. And it's this internal conflict of following that thing, of really just being free to do it in the way I want to do it, where I don't know how often I've canceled soccer for something that I thought I have to do, like a dinner that I should go to or like a trip that I should be doing. Whereas the thing that I actually want to do was like just play soccer. Sure. And it's interesting where then later on I'm asking myself, why did I just, cancel? Like I would have left just like, hey, no, I don't want to go to your dinner. I prefer to play it. I just didn't say it.
Yeah.
And it's just one example of where I think oftentimes we sabotage ourselves because we believe that we should be doing something. Whereas in actuality, we have the answer there already. It's kind of like we know what we would prefer to do, but we struggle to stick to what we would like to do because it means some conflict, right? It means defining yourself and like maybe also regarding others to say like, hey, I prefer, like, this is the thing I love to do. I prefer that over going to cinema with you, or like to, and it's really, I like to spend time with you. We can do something else, but I would prefer, like, this is one of the things I like the most. I would I prefer to go to soccer training. And it's this simple thing where I think the more we deal with this, the more we go into these internal and external conflicts of figuring out what we really enjoy doing, and the more we build our environment that way, a very simple life can be very fulfilling.
Absolutely. And yeah, I love that approach. It's like Joseph Campbell, it's finding your bliss. It's finding your bliss and then pursuing it. And I think that I don't want to imply incorrectly, but what you're saying is find your bliss in another avenue if poker becomes painful, and pursue it with passion, even if it means you are making, barely sort of scraping by financially or whatever that means. Just, find your own version of happiness and pursue that with vigor.
And one thing that I believe is at the core of this process is seeing exploration as something great. That is really, to me, the number one thing that I would love to bring more of into our education system, is that there is that exploration is being empowered and supported. Of, you want to try out 10 different things, great. Like, try to find what you really like, try out different things, take your time. Don't put, like, the message I've got was every single time was, you have to know. You have to know right away. Like, try out one thing, okay, but try out a second, like, oh, you failed one, like, damn, now you're almost failure for life. And I'm sitting here now, and now I'm 26, and if I think back to 18, 19, the pressure I made myself of having to figure out already what I do for the next 40 years, it's like, it makes no sense. It's just, I've seen nothing. I know, like, even now I've seen nothing compared to what you can see. And even now I wouldn't, like, now I'm so cautious to commit myself for the next 5 years. And it's not because I don't want to, it's more because I feel that there's, like, I probably still have 70 plus years ahead of me. That's massive. So I think exploration is such an important thing, where don't feel bad being in that state of exploring. It's amazing. If you have half a year, 2 years, even on the side, like, if you work exploring new things, it's the most valuable thing, in my opinion, that you can do, because it gets you closer to exactly establishing this type of environment that fulfills you.
And the thing is, you explore something and it sucks, you hate it, it makes you unhappy. Well, great. you just quit, right? Like, you found something that doesn't make you happy. And I love that you have this fear of committing yourself to something 5 years down the road, because, like, just, I'm 35, so I got a decade on you. And the 25-year-old version of myself, I have, like, it's a different human being. Like, we change so frequently that what makes you super happy and super pumped and super motivated today may not make you feel that way in 5 years. So constantly the exploration process and iterating and changing, like, that's genius to me. That's it seems like a very healthy way to go through life.
I think it's important to see that that's fine. Like, that it's totally fine to, it's, I think in that regard, we have very high expectations and put a lot of pressure on something that we just don't know. We just have to figure out.
It's societal pressure too. It's parental, from friends. It just hits you from all angles, right? And then, you have marketing, the markers of success, a nice house and a nice car and a steady income and all of these things. And you think, oh, well, you're always looking up and trying to get these things that you think might make you happy. And I think that one of the biggest crimes in life is when you get that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow and you realize, I'm 65 years old and this doesn't make me happy. Like, that you're searching for something that didn't bring you the fulfillment you expected, and you weren't fulfilled in the process the whole way through. Like, I think that's, it's a very sad story for human beings. So just removing or minimizing the outside influences, the noise, focusing on the fulfillment and the journey and trying things out, like, that's a way to be. I think that's a recipe for a happier, more fulfilled life. What is up, my loyal Chasing Poker Greatness listener? Coach Brad here, and I just wanted to take a moment to ask you a simple question. How many times have you heard my guests and I speak passionately about the benefits of poker coaching? You get to expand your poker network, receive expert feedback you can rely on, and have your burning questions answered by a trusted mentor. Which brings me to the Poker Power Hour, a series of 100% free live 1-hour poker webinars, masterclasses, and hand history breakdowns that kick off each and every Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Poker Power Hour will be led by me, Coach Brad, as well as some of your favorite Chasing Poker Greatness guests. It will be your weekly guide for helping you plug your leaks, skyrocket your poker growth, expand your network of crushers, and inevitably win more money on the green felt. The Poker Power Hour is premium content and live only. There will be no free replays or view on demand, and the content will eventually be released as paid training only. So head to enhanceyouredge.com, opt in to the Poker Power Hour, and get for free today what you'll have to pay for it later. Once again, to catch the Poker Power Hour every single week, head to enhanceyouredge.com and join the email newsletter. Now, back to the show. I am supposed to talk about poker, even though this is my podcast and I can talk about whatever I want. I am supposed to talk about poker at some point in here. So
We talk about poker all the time.
that's true. We do. And
This is tying. I think this ties in.
oh, it does.
I really believe this is a very important conversation also for the topic of poker, because it's exactly tackling certain topics that I think should be tackled more in whatever area it is to just, also in poker there's a lot of pressure from all sides, like around expectations as well, and responsibilities that we feel. And I think it's super valuable to go deeper into that and just like ask ourselves the question of how are we feeling right now, and is that still the thing we want to do? And also, it's totally fine to not try to be the best. It's totally fine to do it for fun. It's totally fine to move on and do something else. And it's fine if you don't feel like that's the thing anymore, that the same way you thought it might be like 5 years ago. And it's important, I think, to talk about that.
For sure, because poker can be a trap. You can. There are people in the middle of their journey that have, they have a day job. They play poker as a hobby. They love it. They want to be professional, right? And then what does that mean? And then what's the end game after that? I think that always thinking about happiness, fulfillment, is just of paramount importance, no matter where you're at. So, segueing a little into some like actual poker, like strategy. So it's very specific. One thing that, in listening to your interviews and doing research, that I love is the importance that you place on physical tells. Can you tell me about, number one is, why did you decide to spend so much energy on physical tells? Especially because I think in a lot of the poker community, they get a bad rap. But like, as a live player that started his career playing live, physical tells were something that I spent a ton of energy on from the very, very, very beginning, because I recognized the usefulness of them. So like, why did you spend so much time on understanding people's human behavior?
It's pretty simple, because first of all, it's intriguing me. Second of all, it was just very valuable. And it was seemingly valuable. So that was very naturally the thing to look into. So, I started playing 500 or like 100 euro tournaments, and like probably the ones I played a lot were somewhere between 500 and 5K. And so basically the people I play against, 80-90% of them have never or almost never thought around structuring their physical behavior. So it's very natural, right? And so now I think, if it's very natural, I believe that it's very, very, it's just logical that it's very helpful to try to understand what natural behavior means in different situations. And especially if the tells become stronger, the more is at stake. Because mostly if more is at stake, that really strongly correlates to the intensity of tells.
The pressure, right?
That exactly. So that also means if there's more at stake, there's more to win if you do it well. And so that was always like, that was the reason, pretty simple, why I've spent so much time with it.
What did the process look like, understanding human behavior?
So it's trial and error. basically just, again, step number one is just observing. Is basically trying to be as conscious around what is happening as possible without spending too much energy on it. That's like kind of a fine balance, because it's also, I've also always been an opponent of trying to be 110% at every point in time, because I also try to look at it from a long-term perspective, and it's tiring. Grinding is tiring. So I've tried to find a good balance of being able to play long hours with picking up it's basically, I think the most important thing in big pools of information, so difficult games like poker or other big areas, is dissecting the relevant from the irrelevant. And it's the same with tells. So I try not to pick up every little detail, but I try to be aware for if something pops up that I believe is relevant. So I looked at every bigger pot. I try to look at the people that I play a lot against, because if I play a lot against them, then obviously it's more relevant. I try to look way more if I was deep in a tournament.
Is this through like film study or personal observation?
Some was film, but especially when I started playing the high rollers, I watched probably almost everything there is on the players I played against. But in the other ones, it was mostly live. So especially like WSOP is a great example. EPTs. Like I was just constantly trying to categorize the players that I play against to get a good feeling. And I think that's the thing that I've always done well, is to create. It's about creating logics that are not too complicated so that they're useless, but also not too simple so that they're useless.
Right. The perfect level of complexity.
That's basically exactly what it is, because you don't want to have, like, if you structure a logic in a program, it's basically if this, then that. And if he blinks 15 times a minute, like that means he's this. And if he blinks 25, that means this.
Right.
It's mostly not that simple. So it's also not 50 of these rules, and then it's like maybe 3. And to that's kind of what I intuitively did, is to structure these things of what am I looking for? And then it basically boiled down to eyes, skin, pulse, and posture. And then obviously other tells more game related around sizing,
timing.
And then there's some more specific things for special players.
Right.
Shoutouts to Ike Hexen. So like there's one thing, for example, where there's certain players where you can see when they think. And it's, I think especially players that I played hundreds of hours against, it's extremely relevant to see how much they think and how hard they think.
Because go into the reasoning why.
So basically, I make a very practical example. Most of the good high stakes players, they take a certain amount of time for a situation to balance their range. So they're on the flop. They always take at least 5 seconds. If you have a range in a certain situation, and there are going to be about 70-80% of your hands that you have in the spot where you know exactly what you're going to do. It's either a snap call or like a snap bet, a snap call, snap check, like you just know. And then there's somewhere between 10 and 50% of your hands where you have to think, because there are mixed frequencies or they're borderline hands. So now the thing is, if you can differentiate, if someone is waiting and knows what he's doing, or if someone is thinking, that changes the hand.
Exactly.
So if someone is pre-flop and you see that he knows what he's doing versus you see he's thinking, that is massive information.
Yep. And the same thing happens online. Over the course of playing cards, you see, like, I raise under the gun, and then the small blind or the button insta 3-bets, right, at a 6 max table. An insta 3-bet means something different than a tank for 6 or 7 seconds and then a 3-bet. An instant 3-bet, in my experience, has meant they know they're three betting. It's more value oriented hand. And then a think is like, let's look at the HUD. Let's analyze the data. Okay, now should I be three betting this guy? Should I not? Like, and so you get a good feel just based on one pre-flop decision as to the kind of range that this guy's three betting you with.
The slight difference though is their timing. Like you're referring to timing tells basically of like,
Sure.
okay, if they do it fast, if they do it slow. But I really mean the
like
timing
is the same.
Oh, they actually exactly. It's like you can literally see how their brain works.
You can see the gears turning.
Yeah.
Because people, this is something like in high school, I never realized this, but my sister, her friends would ask, why is your brother so angry all the time? Like I passed him in the hall. Why does he look so angry? Right. And it took me until I was probably like 30 years old to realize that when I'm thinking, I look angry. Like this is how people interpret. So like I was just thinking, like I was always just deep in thought, right? But like, you know, you can tell when people are really, really, really thinking. And now apparently Ike Haxton will know. You have to act like you're thinking all the time, Ike.
It was interesting because like for some reason, I mean, you see it with lots of players, but I just remember a couple of hands where I believe there was a lot of value for some time in that. And it was just interesting how certain players, there were some things, especially against the ones I played a lot, where especially in like 215, 216, there was a lot of value in really understanding what their thought process is, what triggers them, what's important to them, and how they think.
Oh, for sure. I mean, especially like when you're playing these giant high rollers and with a shallow pool of players you're interacting with just over and over and over and over and over again. Okay, so when you think of joy in your poker career, what's the first memory that comes to mind?
The most emotional I ever felt in poker was actually when my friend David won the W Coupe in 2013. And it was I just remember because something, I felt like I wasn't able to think anymore for a long time. And I don't remember ever having that again. My brain was just, I was hyper awake. I was full of endorphins, but I could only internally just scream and be happy. And I will never forget this moment. And yeah, it was just really exciting. But there's been multiple ones, especially it's kind of been like a ladder of moments where always the biggest win at the time was just crazy emotions. It was this feeling of thing, like, because especially when it's so tense for a long time and then it just all releases in this one moment. And it was stronger in the beginning, actually.
Yeah.
Like the first 100K I won when I won Super Tuesday, or when I won Sunday 500 after a long grind. And I remember like this was crazy. I was sitting there, and the next days it was just, it was just crazy.
Because part of the poker mythology, right, is slowly turning yourself into an emotionless robot. So like it makes so much sense that in the beginning, when you have a big score, this is where the emotions are going to be the highest, right? And I love that the first memory that comes to your mind, it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with your friend.
It had to do with me.
So you had
I had a big piece.
Right? Okay. But that changes the narrative just a little.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously I was really happy for him, but obviously the financial part played a big role, because that was when I became a millionaire. And
oh wow,
it was just flashing, because like 7 months ago maybe I had like 10K to my name or something. So it was crazy. Just I wasn't used to it, let's say it like that. And it was this crazy, I can't believe what's happening right now feeling.
Yeah. All right. So now the pieces tie in. You're not just like the best friend in the world. Okay.
No.
When you think of pain in your poker career, what's the first memory that comes to mind?
I think the part where I can't tie it to like a specific memory, But the part where I felt alone in the sense of around like 2015 probably, where I believe I was one of the best in the world, both online and live, and I was just losing for an extended period of time, maybe 9, 10, 11 months. And everyone around me thought I was winning. And I felt, especially after the year before, like, I mean, 2014, I won W Coupe main and like I had decent scores, but financially I was actually probably like, I don't remember exactly, but like I didn't really make much profit in the last 18 months. And I think I was at my absolute peak. And this is interesting in comparison because I just felt like I couldn't share it with anyone. I felt like the expectation was, even of my friends, was you can never complain again, or in terms of you can never talk about negative feelings again. Also, it's not about complaining. It was just about like, hey, I don't feel well. Like it just doesn't feel good. And this feeling of I cannot share that with anyone, even in my closest circle, because there's no understanding. That was probably the most, I would say, painful or negative emotions I've had in poker. Yeah, that was probably the time I connect the most negative stuff with.
Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I can imagine I can see the trap. I can see all the things, right? Like, you know, who am I to complain when I've had so many things go right for me and all my friends are looking up to me and I'm, you know, it's, but yet you still feel the emotions and you still feel the pain and you had no outlet. If you could erect a billboard that every poker player has to drive past, what does the billboard say?
The first thing that came to mind was really just do what you love. And it kind of sounds very cliche, but I really, really believe in it because I could see how much it changed my life in terms of also simplicity. I mean, I see it now, how many things I'm doing and meeting a lot of people and working on a lot of projects. And basically the realization of the last year has just been like this, I'm trying to build an identity to, again, like just finally be whole, where the simple things are really the things that matter. And I can tell that whenever I strip everything apart is when I just did it and went to Bali for 10 days and just like went with the closest people I could think of and just spend time in nature. And it's only a simple experiment, but I realize again, like, hey, I really don't need a lot of this stuff. I just need very healthy relationships that fulfill me. I like to spend time with myself. I like to, just reflect on experiences I made. And I don't need a lot of the things that I believe I need.
Whether you get told or programmed that you need to.
Yeah. And so that's really kind of the core message, I believe, is to really focus on exactly that, like the relationships around you, to just really enjoy what you're doing and to also be totally fine that you haven't figured everything out. I think that's also something like this. I have this constant feeling that I just have that I need to have everything figured out, and that it's like totally okay to not have it figured out. And that also for me, like I get a lot of the external feedback of, hey, you have a lot of money, like have this and this and this going for you. Have, like, it's not, everyone is kind of in the same boat, like just different. And I think it's important to make space for that also. Like I just keep myself busy to not deal with certain things and like to just strip that apart and just say like, hey, no, these are the essential things that I really care about. Everything else is just a distraction and noise. And like the more I do that, the happier I am.
I think human beings can make things very complex and get away from the simple things that give them joy and pleasure in their life. And finding the why, tying it all back into purpose from the very beginning of the conversation. Why are you doing something? What do you love? What is your purpose? And trying to be aware of the distractions that pull you away from that purpose.
I also think with this, like, I don't know. And I think it's also, again, it's okay to not know. Like I can't list, I can't design you the perfect, okay, now it's all, if my life is like this, everything is perfect. And I think,
well, it's never going to be that way. It's never going to be perfect.
But it's,
right?
I think it's still, I for me, it's important to constantly remind me of that, because I have the tendency to believe that once this, then that. It's more like, again, like simplifying what other things I like. I like to really like to learn new things. I just like that these moments of being inspired by something, whether it's like this creation process really intrigues me, of people creating things, new perspectives that in some way inspire me, or I can learn something from. And I think that's almost everything in some capacity. And I like to design things. I really, in lots of ways, whether it's spaces or environments or products or just processes, ideas. I just like to play around with ideas. And yeah, it's just to identify that. And also, I mean, I like traveling a lot. I like playing soccer. Like, there's it's some basic things that I just enjoy. And
in your heart, you're a dreamer too, right?
Yeah.
You enjoy dreaming. And again, I think this is something that dreamers, there's this external force to turn dreamers into doers and to minimize the dreaming aspect of things, just from a societal and world perspective. And I'm a dreamer too, so that this is I can empathize with being a dreamer, right, and having ideas and pursuing them, and that whole process. So I 100% wanted to talk about Poker Code, right? If you could give like a 120 second, like, what's your why behind Poker Code? Why should people invest their money into your thing over other things?
I think it's important to understand my intention behind it. And so the Poker Code is basically the number one question by a mile that I've been asked over the last years has been, can you coach me? How can I learn from you? What are the books, like, how can I learn XYZ? What are the best books I could read? It was like all the same. It was like, how can I learn from you? And out of this, I've always thought about how can I share my way of thinking about it that might bring other people inspiration or joy, or just, help them think about it in a different way. That's kind of the first idea. So how can I, just as an exercise as well, but also as something to bring other people forward, is how can I share what I know in the best possible way? And that's how I work together with Matthias on creating the Poker Code, is to really think about how can we condense our knowledge, our thoughts in a course as good as possible to really bring not so much the solutions. Like, that was really the thing that also is the feedback of people that ask for it. Like, I think it's a different way of thinking. I think the reason why I became so successful is because I think in logics, not in solutions. I don't care about a solution. I can learn from a solution. It's sometimes interesting, and it's nice for learning. But the thing I really care about is logic. So I wanted to share my logic and Matthias' logic around how to approach the game, because I believe, and that now changes it, a solution helps you only for poker, right? But if you really practice and exercise logic, that helps you for everything. The reason why I can transfer my experience and knowledge very well into other areas is because I've basically done 6 years of practice in creating, like dissecting information, creating logics, and just improving processes. And you can do that in every other area that you're in. So this is the first part. And the second part that I've always been pretty vocal about is the community aspect. So I personally believe that relationships are just important for everything. And the key math that I've always tried to showcase is the reason why we crushed poker as Team Germany, how they'd like to call it, was because what we did was 8 people experience 10 hours. They filtered the 10 hours down to half an hour. We exchange, and you've basically learned 80 hours worth of content in like 10% of the time. And that's the core idea of, like, it's so smart to just, like, why don't you just exchange knowledge and like connect, like, and then that's only the knowledge aspect, but also the aspect of You actually have people to connect to, you build relationships, you have the emotional backup, you have people you can share, bounce back and forth ideas with, and like that is not 1 + 1 like equals 2. That's like 1 + 1 = 5. And
it's all coming together for me. In our pre conversation about connecting people to create bigger things, I've never actually thought about it that way, but you're absolutely right. Like, I can have 40 hours of experience, distill it to 1 hour, have a conversation, and give you my 40 hours, and you give me your 40 hours, and 10 people, and then all of a sudden you get all this experience, all these different perspectives, all this knowledge that's applicable moving forward. This is why a tribe of people is just so important, and it's not a coincidence. It's very logical that group of y'all, the German crushers, ended up 10 of the best poker players that are breathing today.
And it's not because, like, that's the thing also to understand, is not that we are 10 absolute geniuses.
Yeah.
No, but it's really important. I mean, if you look at it, I think basically there were some people who dropped out. It's maybe been like 10, 11, 12 people total. But like from the people who were in from the beginning to the end, every single one of them became a top 100, top 50 poker player worldwide. Like it's not just a bunch of geniuses who like made it, like who would have made it anyway. We started with almost zero. We probably made 100, 150 million combined. Like it was just inevitable because we made a multiplayer game out of a single player game, not by cheating, but by just exchanging the knowledge we gain. And through that, you just multiply your progress over and over and over again, and you just speed by everyone else.
So for people looking for a poker life hack, poker growth hack, that's it. I mean, this is the most actionable growth hack you can get.
Anything.
Yeah.
Like learn from other people and share your experience openly. Number one, learning.
And working under the assumption that, y'all aren't just 10 poker geniuses that randomly became friends with each other and then crushed the poker world, right? Like, there's actual logic behind it. My journey looks similar too, in that I had a friend, we talked with each other, we grew exponentially just from having those discussions, right? Like, it's very logical and makes complete sense.
And I'm not saying we were a random selection of people. Obviously, there was some type of pre-selection, and like it was already people who were probably more likely to be successful, but not in the sense of we would have been successful no matter what. It was more like in that constellation, I believe so, but alone, probably not.
Right. In that formation.
So the combination is the thing that makes the difference.
I would say that you had the potential to be successful, but if you're 10 people,
sure,
born 10 places across the map, and you're all isolated on your own poker journeys, it's very improbable that you would have you'd be in the top 1,000 poker players, for instance.
Yeah, most likely, yeah.
Okay. Final question. Where can the Chasing Poker Greatness audience find you on the interwebs?
I mean, pretty easy. Just Google me, probably. But yeah, Instagram, I post quite a bit. Not so much about poker anymore, but still quite a bit. The best is actually, like, the part I'm most active about poker is Poker Code. So pokercode.com. If you're part of if you buy the product, you're part of the community. I'm in there in Slack. We chat basically on a daily basis with the people in there. They ask about hand histories, and it's pretty fun. And there's a lot of things to come there. So if you're interested, I'd be happy to have you guys on board.
Do you think there's the value is the same as far as like a Slack group, a Discord group, and then like the immersive process of living with people?
I don't think it's the same, but I think it's like it can be very it can work very well in harmony. Like there's certain things like this group, like for example, I did that too. I had different groups of people that I engaged in different ways, right? Like the people that I lived with basically were people more on my skill level or around my skill level. And then there were also forums where I talked to people who were way better than me, or maybe on Skype. So it's, I think, establishing these different type of communication channels, whereas like, I'm not saying like do only poker code. I think it's a great way to get input from players that are potentially way better than you and connect with some that are on the same level, and then form groups of people who are on the same journey and like go hard with them.
And then it all ties back in because you get the information from poker code, you have a roommate, you share that with them. You know, they get information from somewhere else, they share it with you, and then boom, 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 the progression.
Boom, 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 boom.
Boom, 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 boom. All right, my man. Thank you very much for your time, for your energy. I'm extremely grateful. Can't wait to share this with everybody. Take care. Have a great day.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Chasing Poker Greatness. If you haven't yet subscribed to the show, please take a moment to do so on Apple Podcasts or wherever your favorite place to listen to podcasts may be. And once again, I wanted to let you know about PKC Poker. If you're on the lookout for a new poker platform where the games are safe and secure and the action's amazing, head to enhanceyouredge.com/PKCpod to get your code and jump into the games. You must have a code to play, as well as be 21 years of age or older. One final time, that's enhanceyouredge.com/PKCpod. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time on Chasing Poker Greatness.